What are you doing?
Nothing.
Doesn't look like nothing.
Okay, so I'm trying to set my hand on fire.
I can hand you a lighter.
That's not the point. I am trying to set my hand on fire with the power of my mind.
What the hell inspired this brilliant plan?
Of course it did. Welcome to Hollow City, the sequel to Ransom Rigg's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
So let's recap. Jacob saw his grandfather murdered by monsters, and while this traumatizes him, he also realizes that he doesn't know a whole lot about his grandfather. His grandfather had always told him crazy stories about what it was like to grow up in World War II, where he met these peculiar children with strange and abnormal abilities. Jacob realizes that he wants to figure out what was the truth, and he decides to head to Wales, where his grandfather spent time in this orphanage. So off he goes, and he realizes that his grandfather's stories were all true, and that these children that his grandfather met in World War II are actually still alive and living in a time loop, guarded by a magical bird woman named Miss Peregrine.
The monsters Jacob saw murdering his grandfather were once peculiar, but on a quest for immortality gone wrong, they got turned into creatures called hollows. The monsters managed to get inside the time loop and steal Miss Peregrine, but the children managed to steal her back. But now she's stuck in the form of a bird, so the children are forced to leave the time loop and go look for another magical bird woman who can help them save her.
The kids set out in a rowboat, and they're pursued by whites dressed as Allied soldiers.
Unlike the first book, where the children's powers were the strangest things you ran into, this book offers a little bit more variety. Let's make a list of the weird things we run into.
Peculiar animals.
I mean, what is an imuraf? Like, really?
And peculiar pigeons.
'Cause one of the most ordinary creatures to walk the face of the earth.
A guy in a clown suit who has some weird kind of power, and gypsies.
Gypsies, tramps, and thieves, but every night the men would come around.
Between all the weird things the kids encounter, they actually bounce from place to place in a very creepy World War II Europe.
One of the best things about this book is its atmosphere. It's hard to explain exactly how it does it, but it always manages to have this eerie, gritty feeling.
Like something is often wrong, even though the events of the actual story are pretty normal.
The creepiness could come from the kids' powers, or from the powers of the people that they meet. They're not your normal glorified superhero powers like laser eyes or flying. It's things that would be highly off-putting if you met them in real life.
Take a character like Enoch, who can bring things to life by using pickled hearts, and he also has this weird evil overlord mentality that just creeps you out. Or Hugh, who has a colony of bees living in his stomach, and they frequently just fly out of his mouth. These are powers that are very interesting, but would also set your hair on end.
The main character, Jacob, by all accounts, has lived a fairly normal life in the late 21st century, and has only recently learned of his ability to see monsters. Jacob isn't whiny or obnoxious, despite the fact that his powers give him a great responsibility. And while he may not be your favorite protagonist, he is fairly solid and is slowly growing into his potential.
As you invariably do with a large group of characters, you always come up with favorites over the others so that you can ignore the characters you hate without too much issue. I personally like Bronwyn, who, for some strange reason, was literally described as not very bright in the beginning of the first book, but actually turns out to be quite smart and quite kind.
Hugh, Stomach Bees Kid, also proves that having an army of bees at your disposal is a very powerful tool.
Not the bees! Ah! Oh, my eyes! My eyes! Ah!
Riggs does a great job of giving each character their own individual voice and personality. They may be a bunch of characters in a large group, but they don't come out as a homogenized thing.
Not only that, but the characters have realistic reactions to what's going on around them. Jacob and the other kids really consider the life-altering effects of the decisions that they make and the consequences that it'll have on them, instead of wandering around and being like, oh, it's so easy to do the right thing.
Pow. Wham. First try.
Riggs also does a great job on letting us discover things along with the characters, like information on the Hollows.
Ooh, they're like the Hollows in Bleach, right?
No.
Are you sure? I mean, the Hollows in Hollow City evolve after eating other beings to gain their power, right?
Yeah?
And then after they eat enough, they turn into Arankars.
You mean whites?
Arankars, whites, they're the same thing.
You know what? That's really uncanny.
Do you think he's a giant Bleach fan or something?
Maybe.
But the whites in this book are way more dangerous than they were in the first book. Not only now are they just generally evil mofos, but they're actually organized, which is terrifying. They've been simultaneously attacking loops, kidnapping peculiar children, and their time birds. Our group is probably one of the last groups that they've caught.
The Whites make an awesome antagonist. They're everywhere, they're hard to spot, and they've almost won. This makes Jacob and the other children's struggles a real nail-biter.
But I have to say the best part of this book was the ending.
Hey?
No, what I meant was it was a giant cliffhanger at the end and I am dying for more. And as somebody who read the first and second books pretty much straight through, he better finish the next one very quickly or there will be consequences.
And we know there's going to be another one. There was a nice little advert at the end of the book saying it's coming soon.
Yeah, it's nice when they give you hope. Really?
I am gonna make this work.
You're nuts.
I'm not. No!